Good like that. Anyway, and then just a little bit of a chat on something that came up last week, and it might lead into some other stuff as well. So, Fat Boy Rob got in touch and said, there's a question on Super League Pod, how do we make sure the right clubs stay in the right division? The answer is we don't, the clubs do. Some clubs will do well and get promoted, some clubs will make poor decisions and get relegated. Fans of every club deserve the chance to dream. I think this was off the back of me. I said that, and I stand by that. I think we need to have the top at the top to make the sport stronger, and we need to have the clubs who are doing the right things, making the right moves. Yes, to have access to that top somehow. Totally agree, even though I'm not a big fan of promotion and relegation. That's been put on the record many times over 198 shows. But yeah, I still think there has to be some sort of way for the league to help the clubs that are doing the right things go in the right direction, because too many clubs make poor decisions. Too many clubs make poor decisions trying to be at that top table, which is not the right way to go about it. It's the clubs that make the right decisions that should be guided towards the top table and not the sort of other way around. But Dom, I know you wanted us to talk a little bit about the structure coming up. This leads nicely.
Well, let's just go back onto that question. So I agree. I think the people will point to Featherstone and Lee as two examples of clubs that have fallen on hard times, but they've gambled. Both clubs have gambled on making a top four place and getting that extra cash. And if they're blaming the RFL for it. If the RFL are at fault, maybe they need to have more oversight into all the clubs.
Yeah,
this is the issue that I had with Salford a few years ago when they got the penalty points for the salary cap, but it was over a year afterwards. There was no oversight there. If you're going to have a salary cap, you should be investigating it on a monthly basis. What are you actually paying? It should have to go through an organisation. It just doesn't make sense to me that I completely agree with you.
This was one of the huge problems with the licensing period, was that there was no real clear oversight, and the RFL were happy to say no, it's up to the clubs to run themselves. And what we ended up with was Bradford. 10 years before, 6 years before the middle of the licensing period, when they were kind of starting to feel those real problems. That this was a team that won a World Club Challenge. So there was no oversight, there was no guidance like that. There was no one putting the brakes on stupid decisions and helping guide that. Now, everyone listening will probably say the RFL aren't the right people to guide people to make the right decisions, but the clubs would have had a say in who would be appointed to that sort of role, and that's where that needs to work. But I don't know. We're going to get promotion and relegation because it's demanded in the sporting culture of this country. There's only one sport in this culture where promotion and relegation actually doesn't really make a difference. I'll tell you what sport that is. It's cricket. The reason it doesn't make a difference in cricket is because they all make the most of their money from a 2020 competition that's played in regional conferences, not played through the promotion and relegation aspect like the championship is. Look at football. It's not as much of an impact at the top now because of how much money there is in the game, not just at the Premier League level now, but the championship level as well. And people want to buy them as accessories almost, these loaded people from around the world, not necessarily to make money from them. People try and run rugby league clubs as a business. You can't run a business in this situation because it's dependent on too much other stuff. I'd love to go back to the days where we just had millionaires throwing money at the sport and not worrying about it, but unfortunately some of our top clubs aren't run that way anymore.
No.
The few that are going to have to struggle at some point as well.
Well, you've also got the fact that a lot of the clubs that are there are owned by older gentlemen, let's say. They're not going to be around forever. You need to have a sustainable plan post. It's going to be like, you look at what's happening with Lee when Derek leaves. That could happen to any other Super League club. Well, that could happen to, let's say, 9 out of the 12 Super League clubs. There are only maybe 3 or 4 that are sustainable.
Yeah, well, and I suppose the problem that's come before, back to the guidance point, is some of the clubs that have seemed to have been having greater guidance from the RFL have been the clubs that have gone away or been messed up. So it's a difficult situation to reconcile those two things, but probably those clubs were on a path of destruction beforehand. So it's the EGM over the structure vote coming up this week, and you've got a lot to say And I'm hoping it's not just going to be a regurgitation of what Phil Kaplan says every Monday on a different show, because I know how much you adore Phil Kaplan's view. But
I do agree.
It's your chance to vent.
No, I do agree. I just think we'll take Michael Carr, for instance. Wakefield, is he chairman?
Yeah, he's chairman and co-owner.
I completely respect everything he says. And what he's done, he's kept under budget and he's kept where it is. But his main argument, and on the sorry to plug another podcast, but on the BBC podcast, they had the Warrington chairman, and they both said the same thing, which is fans don't like the fact that they don't know which games, who's going to play, how many games at the end of the season. But if you look at Michael Carr, he's arguing with fans on Twitter now when they tell him that actually, and I've told him, fans don't know, that isn't the main problem. The problem is that last season we played Cass 6 times. We could have played them 8 times. This season we could have played them 8 times, but we played them 5 times. It's the playing
including the pre-season.
Yeah. But they're all still billed as separate games. It's playing the same people again in games that it doesn't matter. I don't trust loop fixtures at all. Think of the difference that the Magic Weekend made. Those 2 points, like, if we'd have got Widnes at Magic Weekend rather than Cass and got them 2 points, we wouldn't have been in the bottom 8. Right, we wouldn't have been in the middle 8s.
Yeah.
Because we'd have been there. So you've got 4. You're going to have 4 loop fixtures that are determined at the start of the season.
Not 4. You're going to have the new structure. You're going to have 6 plus Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how the hell?
The more of them, the less impactful they're going to be in theory, because it's less.
But it all depends on who you could get the bottom 6.
Come on, though. The same argument can be made. It depends on who you play when you've got your injuries. So we could be like, the top teams could have a fully fit squad to play all the lower quality teams and batter those teams off the park.
Yeah.
But then go for a stretch of injuries when they've got all their games against the other top teams, and that might cost them the top 4 or something like that. And it's because of injuries and circumstance. It's not just blaming it on like a fixture list doesn't cover the whole bounce of the ball luck situation that applies to sport. It makes sport so beautiful and romantic.
But you're making it intentionally uneven by quite a wide margin. If you could have a run where you actually play the bottom 6 again.
You could based on what happens the next year. Yes,
exactly. Yeah. It doesn't. So there's no way of determining that, and I don't trust that that's not going to be. If this is the structure that we're going to commit to for X years,
right? Well,
that's what everybody's saying.
Yeah.
Then we are rushing it. There's no doubt about it. We're rushing into it.
I agree with that. And at the start of the season, I said if the new structure isn't in place for next year, at the start of this year, then it's not the right way to go. We need to just do another year of this.
Yeah.
But I just feel like the apathy has grown among so many clubs, and it's been brought through as well by the owners of these clubs to the structure. So everything's negative about it. It's easy to say these things and moan about these things about a Thursday night game that you only have 2 weeks notice for, so you can't shift your plans around, or those sorts of things.
The middle 8s don't change that, because at any point Sky can change a game.
Yeah,
that's it. I don't blame them. For me, the middle 8s are one of the most exciting things at the moment. Every game matters, and people are watching games with teams that they wouldn't normally watch.
Yeah.
Right? You can say there's jeopardy, you can say there's promotion relegation. They're right. I don't know what that is. But that is one of the most exciting things we have. And it has been every single year. That's the Salford try, the Salford drop goal will go down as one of the rugby league's most memorable moments.
Although the £1 million game the year before was one of the most horrible games I experienced watching as a fan. Bradford against Wakefield game. It was not an entertaining game. It was not a dramatic game, and it just felt shit for whichever team lost it. It felt like terminal. Do you know what I mean? But it didn't feel the same way for Salford and Hull KR, because Salford had a rich owner.
Yeah.
Hull KR have got a fantastic fan base.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different.
But even with 1 up, 1 down, you're always going to have a game where whoever wins, if somebody wins it, they stay up. You're always going to have that horrible feeling. But at least with the £1 million game, there's some marketing, there's some excitement.
Oh no, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And the qualifiers is a strength of this system. But is that not breeding the other weakness that no one gave a shit when Wigan played Saints the other night until we watched the game?
Yeah.
And the game was absolutely fantastic, and Wigan were really good, and Saints weren't bad. Yeah. And this was like, whoa, aren't the playoffs going to be great? And then we had to sit back and think, oh wait, that's a month away.
Exactly, but that's
not great, is it?
But that's my issue. Is we've got this really good thing, which is the qualifiers or the middle eights, whatever you want to call them. But then the top eight is shit. There's no getting about it. It's boring for most of the time until you get to that last bit. So rather than
it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be.
It should be more even. We shouldn't be going into the last.
If we had more,
just hoping one team couldn't go on a run to make it interesting.
If the sport had more money, you could make the league leaders shield, give it out then, give them a decent prize, reset everybody, or give them a point. Give them an advantage based on where they're allowed to start again. Make it more interesting. We don't have the money for that.
If we had the money, everyone should have the same. I've said this so many times. Everyone should have the same spend, the same infrastructure, the same spending power, the same ability to recruit coaches, the same training facility quality and nutrition advice and all that sort of stuff. And then that's when you get the parity. Then you don't need to fanny around with your structures and your points differences handed out and all that sort of stuff, because all that is the problem will become because of what happens on the field, those bounces of the ball, those odd decisions, that sort of stuff. That makes it exciting. That's when sport can be great, and that's when you don't have this problem of the top eight being meaningless because everyone's still in it sort of thing. But there's too much of a disparity between the top and the next level down financially, so that causes problems. The solutions out there to keep something exciting at the back end of the season is Phil Kaplan, who we mentioned before. He's come up with the best solution I've heard where you basically have a winner stays in kind of playoff competition at the end of the season.
I did like that idea, but that's the thing with middle eights. I feel like we've got something that's exciting, that's gaining audiences, and audiences go and see it. The fans aren't dropping off as much in the middle eight stuff. They're not amazing, but they're not dropping off. Whereas the top eight isn't exciting.
Well, great attendance at Hull KR over the weekend, actually, for the fact that it was a qualifiers game against a part-time side that they were expected to beat comfortably. To sort of emphasise your point on that. But
rather than go, right, we've got something that works, let's improve the top eight, we're just going to go back to where it was and go back to
where it was. I don't see how it was as bad as people are making out. People like Phil Kaplan, when they talk about it didn't work. Mm-hmm. Well, during that time, attendances grew in Super League faster than they'd done in any period. They reached the highest level they'd been at for, 30 or 40 years. And at the same time, clubs were still getting better. There was grounds were being developed, that sort of stuff. So all those things played a part in why the crowds were bigger, not just the fact that it was loop fixtures or what have you, but people liked that way that the league was set out at that period of time. It was shown by the fact that crowds kept increasing. They've stagnated since, but 2007 and 2008 were real boom years. You started to see an increase in the grand final. What you did start to see at the end was a drop off in the playoff attendances. I think that's a ticket pricing issue. Basically, we talk about not giving the game away for free, not undervaluing the sport and stuff like that, like kind of what happened a little bit at Wembley. If you're going to undervalue it at any point, undervalue it when it is really only going to be the hardcore go into it. Mm-hmm. So when it is the semi-finals of your playoffs and that sort of stuff, sell those tickets dirt cheap. $2.50 for season ticket holders at most or something, I don't know, $5. Just get them in and make them feel valued, and then they go to those games, they don't fall away, and then charge a normal price. You won't feel as ripped off if you're paying £30 next week at Old Trafford if you've only just paid a $5 to watch a playoff game. But that was the only problem that started to appear in terms of audience size during the last time we had this setup that we think we're going to, was the playoff attendances. They started to decline off at the back end of that period when they were the best attended games in the first part of Super League. But everything else was trending upwards from that point of view. What people didn't like was that the same clubs were going down that were coming back up.
Yeah.
That's why we thought, well, licensing might be the solution to that. Just include those clubs in anyway, and then we don't have to worry about Salford and Castleford flip-flopping every year and swapping off the team as they do it. But there's no